Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome into Crunch Time here on Amateur Sports TV. I am Wags, joined alongside every day by Joe Hamilton and Scott O. And it looked like Joe had disappeared there for a little bit. I wasn't sure exactly what was going on.
I wasn't centered there for a second, which I really never am because my head's always moving. I don't know why. But hey, it's a good day. I was upset about my picture yesterday, but today's a new day.
Joe's the human bobblehead.
Today is a new day. That is for sure.
So how are you doing, Wags? How was your night? Did you get a good night's sleep, man?
I don't know if I would say it was a good night's sleep, but I did sleep. I had an adult beverage or two during the Blue Notes podcast that we did last night with my buddy Tom Franklin live from Enterprise Center. Had to drink a little bit after that game. So I was, for me, when I drink, I get tired. So it was the perfect, nighttime remedy to be able to go to bed pretty early. So I slept pretty well, but I had to get up early for classes today. So it wasn't a great night's sleep, but it was still a sufficient night's sleep. We'll put it that way. Scott, how was your night last night?
It was good, man. It was a good night. Good day yesterday with the football. This morning, not so much fun. I was on 70 in traffic in the freaking downpour this morning. Were you out in that traffic this morning trying to get anywhere?
Not necessarily. I had to run up to the store real quick around, about 7:45 or so, and it was raining pretty decently. But I didn't have to encounter any traffic or hop on the highway or anything like that. But I could see it being an absolute mess because it was coming down for like an hour at least straight.
Yeah, I had to run out to Riverport this morning, and so I was on 70 stuck in that traffic. It was raining, and then every once in a while it would start sleeting, and then there'd be a few snowflakes, and then it would thunder. It was fun.
What were you going over to Riverport for?
I had to do some stuff for Spectrum. We had to do a orientation video thing for some new equipment that's coming out.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we gotta get the hookup with Spectrum so we can make sure we are using the highest rated Wi-Fi or internet possible because my Wi-Fi sucks. And I've been thinking about going strictly to my own internet connection to speed things up, but I may have to use the Spectrum hookup possibly.
Yeah, maybe. Dude, real quick before we get into the show, you should see this new technology that's coming out. It's going to be out in the fall. It's literally going to be voice activated, and it's going to be able to control. You're going to be able to set it up to control your microwave, your refrigerator, your coffee pot. I mean, we're headed towards Jetsons days, boys.
Where are the flying cars? Are we going to see those in our lifetime?
They're coming. They're not very far away, unfortunately. They're testing them in Asia right now in different places.
And with Elon Musk and everything going on with Tesla and SpaceX and all that stuff, it definitely would not surprise me if there's actually already a few out there. We just don't know about it yet.
Wouldn't surprise me either.
All right, well, enough about flying cars and the Jetsons and the technology of the future. Let's talk a little bit about the grit and glory and the bloody battle that is football, because we had two epically good games yesterday. Scores may not dictate that per se, but two really, really good championship games. We talked a little bit about this last night during the nightly show. Just kind of want to get your reactions a little less than half a day later from those games. See if you guys have the same thoughts about what went down and any changes to your thought processes after getting a night's sleep on what happened yesterday.
Go ahead, Joe.
Well, that Packer game left me weeping. Well, not weeping, let's be honest. I wouldn't cry over a sporting event. But at the same time, it did leave me a little with a bad taste in my mouth a little bit. I question what the Packers were doing at the end of the first half in terms of a defensive scheme. I talk about why Aaron Rodgers did not run it into the end zone when he had a chance to. I'm waking up today with a little more questions than answers, knowing that Aaron Rodgers may not go back to Green Bay. And, Honestly, it seems like he's lost his love for football a little bit. It's really scary to even think about life without Aaron Rodgers. So if that's the case, Jordan Love better be ready. And on the other game, I took the Bills, and a lot of people gave me crap for that. But, I'm not going to deviate from my pick. I did a few times this season. I know you're going to go there. I know one of you are. So I did deviate from that pick a couple times this season. I wasn't going to do it this time. And you know what? I was one game short from being right. One game short. Did you guys see that? Did you guys see that coming? The fact that the Bills were one game short, I almost was right.
Yeah. That's why we both picked the Chiefs to win. Yeah, we saw it coming.
No, I know you saw it coming, but did you see the Bills getting this far? Is my question. Did you see that coming?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it in the offseason that we thought with Stephon Diggs they were going to be good, especially in that division. I don't know that I saw them being 13-3 this year, but yeah, I mean, they had a great year, and Josh Allen, they're only going to get better with Allen in the role that he's taken and the development that he's had the last couple of years. But before we dig into that game, let's go back to the Packer thing real quick. What did you guys take from the Aaron Rodgers press conference after that game? Because that didn't sound to me like a guy who wasn't coming back to Green Bay. That sounded to me like a guy that wasn't coming back to football.
Yeah, I was a little surprised about that, to be honest with you. He definitely did seem like he was done, and that's a really hard thing to take. But it's not surprising so much now that you hear talk like that, especially after what happened with Andrew Luck, kind of surprisingly retiring out of nowhere. It makes me think that it's not out of the question, because maybe he sat back and he's like, okay, look, now I really do want to start a family or do something else and not have to worry about the wear and tear that's going to go on my body for the next 3, 4, 5 years if I continue playing. It makes me think that he's definitely thought about it, but there's no way that he goes out like this. He's a guy, he's a competitor. He's going to want to find a way to win a championship. And somebody pointed it out earlier today. It's why would Aaron Rodgers retire when all he has to do is look over at the guy that he was playing and go, okay, he's 43. He went to a new team and took them to the Super Bowl. Yes, Tom Brady is Tom Brady, but Aaron Rodgers is pretty damn close. And if that doesn't sit there and make you go as Aaron Rodgers, yeah, I could go to another team and do this, because he's basically dragged a Packers team to the NFC Championship game the last 2 years with almost nothing. So give him some weapons like Tom Brady has down in Tampa, and he has a real legit shot of winning another Super Bowl. So I look at it as it was a little surprising that's the direction he went. Not out of the question that he retires after what Andrew Luck did a few years ago, but I don't see it happening. And we're going to talk about the QB carousel here in just a minute. But in my mind, it was just heat of the moment. He was down after losing to a 43-year-old quarterback. And it definitely, when that happens, you do kind of question yourself on if you've got what it takes. But I don't think this is the end of Aaron Rodgers. It may be the end of him in Green Bay, but it's not the end of Aaron Rodgers in the NFL.
I would hope not. I mean, go ahead, Scott.
No, go ahead, Joe. Say what you're going to say. Go ahead.
Listen, I would hope not. I feel like Rodgers maybe has 2 more years left, and I felt, though it's not in Green Bay, because I think this was the best shot for Green Bay to win a Super Bowl in terms of Rodgers and Adams. I mean, Adams was out of this world, and you saw Alan Lazard actually become a halfway decent receiver, and not to mention Marquez Valdez-Scantling too. One of my, of course, like you guys say, one of my boys, but still, he did become. Of course, it was under a great quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. Who knows what these guys could become under a different quarterback, but still, he took these guys from being mediocre in terms of talent to looking like great receivers. So I don't know where the Packers go from here, because it doesn't sound like Aaron Rodgers is going back to Green Bay. And there are certain places where he could go that, I'd hate to see him in certain uniforms, New England. But that could possibly happen, and that's scary to even think about.
Now, here's the thing. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going anywhere because if the Packers trade him, it's a $32 million cap hit. They would have to cut their next 22 highest paid players to offset the money they're going to lose, even if they traded Aaron Rodgers. So that's not going to happen. It's kind of interesting when you go back and look at it. That speech last night, it's almost like he's following in the footsteps of the guy that came before him. How many times at the end of a season for years did Brett Favre say, I don't know, maybe I'm not coming back? So it almost seems like he's following in Brett's footsteps. But you got to remember, too, Aaron Rodgers is extremely intelligent. I mean, there's rumors that he's been offered the hosting job of Jeopardy. He's gonna be the guest host, but there are rumors that he's been offered that job. And we know that he has aspirations to do things in Hollywood. He's a California guy. He's got all kinds of connections. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that Aaron Rodgers is looking to that next step in his life.
I could see Aaron Rodgers as a good analyst on NFL TV, whether it be CBS or the NFL Network or Fox. You guys see him as a guy that could do TV, or do you think he's too shy for that?
Oh, he's definitely not too shy for it. I think he could do a very good job as being a guy that is in that Tony Romo role where he could be predicting the next play or be able to analyze it. But I think he's a guy that wouldn't be okay with that second tier status. He would be the guy, he would want to be the play-by-play guy. That's what he would want. He would want to be the marquee name on that, title. So I don't think he would go that direction. Being the host of Jeopardy, that's a whole different thing because, yeah, you're taking over for a legend in Alex Trebek, but people can look at that and go, okay, this is something different than what Trebek did. This is Aaron Rodgers. It might be something that he wants to do. I don't know if that's going to happen, but once again, after Andrew Luck's retirement a couple years ago, I'm not surprised if any of this stuff were to happen because the quarterbacks are the most cerebral guys out there. Not to say any of the other players aren't smart, but they're the ones that have to compact so much knowledge into their head and basically just do everything on the field, whether they can or not. They have to see everything. So these guys are people that want to preserve their minds. They want to preserve their bodies. They see what the toll is being done to them and those around them. So it wouldn't surprise me once again if he does decide to say, I'm done.
I'm sorry, but Frankie, Rodgers would never go to the Bears. I know you put that up earlier and I didn't respond to it. Yeah, that would never happen. And even if it did, the respect in Green Bay would be from here and it would go down to here. I mean, that I just don't think he'd disrespect Green Bay in that fashion. I just don't. Sorry. I had to entertain that because I'm like, that's nuts.
But the Packers fans would forgive him. I mean, look at Brett. Brett went to Minnesota and took them to 2 NFC championship games, and he's still loved in Green Bay. I mean, that place was packed when he came back, and they retired his jersey. So if Rodgers did go, I don't think he'll go to Chicago, but if he did go somewhere like that, Packers fans would forgive him in a few years.
Packers-Bears rivalry, though, is a lot bigger than the Packers-Vikings rivalry in my mind. Yes, it's still a rivalry with Minnesota, but it's Chicago and Green Bay. It's always been that knockdown, drag-out rivalry. Can you really say that about Green Bay and Minnesota?
Yeah, because it's actually been more competitive over the last few decades because the Vikings have been a better team than the Bears have year in, year out. They and the Packers have fought for the playoffs a lot more times over the last 20 or 25 years than they and the Bears have, just because the Bears haven't been consistently good.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd actually agree with that in the sense that I think it's more so that the Bears-Packers rivalry has diminished over the last 15 to 20 years. I mean, yes, it is, as Frankie puts it, the oldest rivalry in sports, but when you have one team that's got sheer domination and one team that's kind of always missing the boat in a sense, it goes away. You could say the same thing about the Cardinals-Cubs rivalry. It's an old rivalry. It definitely gets heated at times, but it's not what it used to be in a sense where fans and players alike hated each other. It's a friendly rivalry. I mean, I think it is. I think it's a friendly rivalry. Some of the players will get a little bit heated about it. I mean, obviously Chris Bryant has as well, but I just, in my mind, I look at it and I go with free agency and the way that players have moved around. I mean, hell, Jose Martinez was on the Cubs last year. And while the Cubs and Cardinals both weren't all that great, we didn't sit there and say, okay, we absolutely hate Jose Martinez now. He'll never be looked at as a former Cardinal in the same way. You can even go back to when Jim Edmonds went to the Cubs. Yes, La Russa tried to make it an issue, but people still looked at Edmonds and were like, he's still Jim Edmonds. He was a great Cardinal. It's a shame to see him in the Cubs uniform, but that's what free agency does. So, I mean, you guys can argue against it all you want, but I just feel like in some instances, these rivalries have become more friendly in a sense and just different in the last 15 to 20 years.
Scott, what do you think?
I mean, yeah, the Cardinals Cubs rivalry's always kind of been friendly. I mean, yeah, there have been heated moments, Tony and Dusty and stuff like that, but part of that is because the Cubs are not very good most of the time. You know, kind of like we were talking about with the Packers and the Bears, kind of that same thing where when one team's really good and the other team's down, it kind of takes away from it. When they're both good, that rivalry is pretty intense. But yeah, I mean, it's never been the hated rivalry like the Dodgers Giants or the Yankees Red Sox. It's always been more of a friendly, respected rivalry.
Yeah, fans don't kill each other in the parking lot and stuff like that when it comes to Cubs Cardinals or something like that. That's for the Dodgers and Giants.
I've seen a lot of marriages where someone's a Cub fan and someone's a Cardinal fan. I go, how does that work? I mean, yes, it's a friendly rivalry, but when it comes to a marriage, man, all bets are off.
No, it's the Midwest. The Midwest is kind of like Canada South in a sense. Yeah, we're not as epically nice as Canadians, but for the most part, we kind of roll with the punches. We don't really necessarily get too heated about a lot of stuff. We're passionate, but we're not going to hold something against somebody in a lot of cases, outside of politics, but that's a whole nother story. But like, yeah, I like to think that the Midwest is kind of like Canada South. We kind of just roll with the punches, and, you may disagree with which team that you cheer for or what have you, but we're gonna rib you a little bit on it, but we're still gonna be able to form relationships and friendships and marriages and things like that. When you talk about East and West Coast, there's just something different about it, and it makes sense because they think they're all high and mighty out on the coasts and all that, but there is just something different about East and West Coasts that you don't see in the Midwest. So you don't see a lot of Yankees fans and Red Sox fans getting together and hooking up outside of those drunken parties. Same thing with the Dodgers Giants. But in the Midwest, you do. I mean, you can hate the Cubs, you can hate the Red Wings, you can hate those teams, but you don't necessarily hate the fans because you respect the fact that they are fans of their teams. And our fandom runs deep, and we can respect the deep running fandom of other teams.
Other than Nashville.
Yeah. Yeah, and you got to remember too the differences in those rivalries, because the Giants-Dodgers rivalry goes back to when they were both in New York, and we're in the same city, and the Yankees-Red Sox rivalry kind of began and started when the Babe Ruth trade happened over some opera tickets. So, I mean, that's kind of what started those rivalries. Whereas the difference with the Cardinals and the Cubs thing, and I mean, you can make a case like you said, Wags. There have been years in the Cardinals case where, while the Cubs are their main rival, their rivalry with the Astros for that stretch was way bigger than their Cubs rivalry. They had a stretch where their rivalry with the Brewers was bigger. There was a stretch where their rivalry with the Reds was bigger. So it's a lot of it's had to do with the Cubs just not consistently being at the Cardinals level.
What about the Pirates? I mean, there were a span of a couple of years where the Pirates were good and the Cardinals were good, and those games got heated.
Yeah, they did. They played in the playoffs and stuff, but I don't think that was ever at the same level as the Astros or
right.
the Brewers or the Reds, for that matter. Just because there were personalities on those teams that clashed.
It was still there, though. You know what I mean? You still had the epic playoff series.
I don't consider that a rivalry. I mean, that's just two really good teams going at it. And that was more of a respect. I mean, that was when Clint Hurdle was the coach. And, Clint Hurdle is a guy that was old school like Tony La Russa, that, their teams played the game hard. They played the game the right way, and they respected their opponents. When it was the Reds, when it was the Brewers, when it was the Astros, there seemed to be a lot of differing opinions about how the game was to be played. And then, like Scott said, there were personalities on both sides during those games. I mean, who can forget the fight between the Cardinals and the Reds? I mean, outside of Jason LaRue, most people don't forget that. With the Brewers, the whole untucking of the jerseys, there was a point of contention there. With the Astros, that was just a nasty rivalry. It really was, because you had Clemens and Pettit, and you had Berkman and Biggio, and I mean, just all these guys that killed the Cardinals, Beltran. So like there was other things there. When you're talking about just two teams that are good matching up in some pretty decent playoff series, that's not the antithesis of a rivalry. That's just a couple of really good seasons, good teams going against each other, playing really good baseball at the same time. They're good series, but it doesn't necessarily build the basis of a rivalry.
Yeah. And then part of those rivalries too was Tony and Dusty. Tony and Dusty screaming at each other all those years. When Dusty was with the Cubs, and then as well when he was with the Reds too.
Nice dark joke there, Wags. I mean,
I can't believe you guys didn't catch that. I mean, and apologies to Jason LaRue if he's listening. I definitely did not mean to make fun of the concussion issues. I really do truly hope that you have recovered and are able to lead a full normal life. But sometimes you got to throw some dark humor in there and maybe toe the line a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't try though, because it won't happen. If you comedy comes best when people don't try.
I don't necessarily believe that's the case, because if you ask any good comedian, they're going to script out their set, and it may not be something that they follow to a T. They got to work the crowd. They got to see what the crowd is into and kind of adjust from there. It's always definitely a fluid kind of project, but a lot of really the great comedians, they will script out what they're going to be talking about. So I actually disagree with you on that. I think you do have to know kind of the direction that you're going when it comes to comedy. Yes, some forms of comedy improvisation is very, very hard to do and does elicit sometimes bigger laughs. But when you're really trying to be a really good comedian, you got to be able to kind of script things around what you're talking about.
I like that comparison there, Frankie.
I've got hair though. And apologies to Don Rickles.
Yeah, that's sad. He was gone too soon.
Pretty sure he lived into his 90s.
I know.
I think he did.
Joe the Eternal, I'm going to live to 160, and if I die at 90, that's too young.
Right?
I mean, isn't that Betty White's speech? I mean, she's close.
She just turned 100. She just, all right. Yeah, she just turned 99.
99.
This is her 100th year of living. So
yeah,
let's keep praying that Betty White sticks around. Did you? I know I've seen this meme a couple of different times, but it came out the other day again, right around her birthday. Something to the effect of, Betty White was born in like 1922. Sliced bread was invented in 1926. So essentially, sliced bread is the greatest thing since Betty White.
Right. Yep.
I mean, that was awesome. So, all right, we got to kind of a little off the topic that we were talking about.
Sorry, yeah.
No, but it was a good conversation and a good laugh. Let's move into the quarterback carousel that we are going to be seeing here coming up once the Super Bowl wraps up. I mean, a little bit of it's going on right now as, the draft lineup is set. We kind of know where some teams might be going, but I was just kind of looking at the list of available quarterbacks and potential available quarterbacks, as well as teams that may be in the need of a quarterback or actually are in need of a quarterback. And man, this list on both sides is incredibly intriguing. I'm just going to run down the list of potential available quarterbacks for you real quick. And then we're going to kind of start picking and choosing where these guys may end up if they even go. So here's the list of available quarterbacks. We've got Dak Prescott, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Jameis Winston, Cam Newton, Andy Dalton, Matt Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Mitchell Trubisky, Matt Ryan, Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, Kyle Trask, Sam Ehlinger. And obviously, the last six or seven were college guys that may and very likely will get drafted. But that's a lot of really, really big names. Yes, some of them are free agents, and some of them are going to have to be traded. That's another wrinkle into this. But then you look at the side of teams that may be in need of a quarterback. Chicago, Indianapolis, Dallas, Atlanta, Jacksonville, Jets, Detroit, Green Bay, Carolina, New England, New Orleans, Houston, San Francisco, and Washington. Now, obviously, Jacksonville is likely to go with Trevor Lawrence at number 1. The Jets have the number 2 pick in the draft. May draft a quarterback, maybe be a little bit smarter, maybe trade out of that spot and get a bunch of picks to really help your team out because you're more than a quarterback away. But after looking at those lists and kind of hearing those names, what do you guys think about what could happen in the offseason in the NFL?
Well, and here's the thing. I'm going to go back to Green Bay real quick because they drafted a quarterback last year in this, I think it was late first round, early second round.
It's only been a year and you've already forgotten the fact that
2 years. No, Jordan.
No, it was this year.
It was this year. Thank you. And I don't know if Green Bay would want to go and get a quarterback when they already have one that learned under the best and Aaron Rodgers. One of the best.
1 year he's learned underneath of him.
I just don't think they bring in another quarterback. I think it's Jordan Love's team to run with. I really do. I think because you can learn so much under Aaron Rodgers just in 1 year. I mean, come on. He went to the NFC Championship game. I think he knows how to carry himself now, how to, respect his teammates, things like that. I mean, granted, he didn't take a lot of snaps and there wasn't a preseason, but you would think next year you would have a full preseason.
Well, let me ask you this before Scott jumps in on this. What would you rather have? And I can't remember the exact time frame that Aaron Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre, but would you rather have had an Aaron Rodgers who sat behind Brett Favre for 1 year or an Aaron Rodgers that sat behind Brett Favre for 3 years?
I'd say, you know what? I'd have to say 3 years, but if that's the case, who's the guy that you bring in? I have one that maybe you do bring in, and this is interesting, and maybe you guys can talk about it. Matthew Stafford. Why not learn under Matthew Stafford for 2 years, and then you take over from there?
Scott, I'll let you answer that one because I think I know where you're going, and I think we're in agreement on that.
No, Stafford's not going to want to do that because the next place Stafford goes, he's going to want to be the star. He's not going to do that knowing that Jordan Love's there. Perfect guy to bring in there. We've seen it happen in a few places now. I would say it would be Ryan Fitzpatrick would be the perfect person to bring in there for a year or two to let Jordan Love learn under.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And as far as Matthew Stafford, I think you're right. I think he wants to be the guy. But I also think that he's played in a dome for so long. And yes, he's had to play outside in Green Bay and outside in a couple other places. But he's going to want to play somewhere that's either in a dome or is in warm weather. I don't think he wants to end the last couple of years of his career playing in the tundra of Green Bay because for me especially, I'm 35 years old. It's cold outside. My bones are a little bit chilly. As a quarterback, you want to be as in most comfortable of a position as possible at that age. So Stafford's not going to go to Green Bay. I don't see Detroit trading Matthew Stafford within the division to Green Bay. We'll talk about interdivision trades here in a little bit. But I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is the right answer if Aaron Rodgers isn't there because we saw it in Miami with Tua. We've seen it in a couple other places with Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's the perfect stopgap for a team that's looking to get a young quarterback into position, but he's also a great mentor as well. He's someone that's going to take these quarterbacks under his wing because he was in that position as well. And yes, you could say all you want about what happened in St. Louis, but I think he got a lot of experience for what it means to be a backup and to be someone that takes guys under their wing. I think he learned a lot in St. Louis, and he does that in his career throughout every stop he's been at. So yeah, if Aaron Rodgers does leave Green Bay, and they're searching for a quarterback, for me, Ryan Fitzpatrick definitely fits the mold of being the guy that they would bring in.
You could also see Aaron Rodgers, and I hate to interrupt you there, Scott, but you could also see Aaron Rodgers if he's 35 years old, go to New Orleans. Maybe.
You could, but I think New Orleans is going to run with Jameis Winston. They brought him in for a reason to sit on behind Breeze for a year. So I think New Orleans is going to go with Jameis and see what happens there. Honestly,
Wags.
See, I I mean, I could see your point and your logic behind that, and it wouldn't surprise me if that's the direction that they go. But I'm going to throw a name out there for New Orleans that people are going to be like, really? Why? Maybe it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And Frankie, you're going to have to see if you can agree with me on this one. I'd love to see Mitchell Trubisky down there in New Orleans. I think his style of play kind of mirrors a guy like a Taysom Hill, but Mitchell Trubisky can throw the ball a little bit better than Taysom. I would personally like to see Mitchell go down to New Orleans and get into that system, be able to throw to a guy like Alvin Kamara, a guy like Michael Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders. I think if you put some of those weapons in front of him, look what he did with Allen Robinson this year. You know, it's not a mistake that Allen Robinson was a great wide receiver this year. He did put in a lot of work. He is definitely a top tier one wide receiver. This is no slight on Allen Robinson without Mitchell Trubisky. But if Mitchell Trubisky can do that with Allen Robinson, imagine what he could do with a Michael Thomas and an Alvin Kamara and all of that. I would love to see Trubisky down in New Orleans.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from there, Wags. Sorry, I'm a little behind you here, so if I step on you, I'm sorry. But if you're New Orleans, do you go out and make a run at a guy like Trubisky, or do you give Jameis a shot because you brought him in, you let him sit behind Breeze for a year? He's kind of learned the system. You know, he was the number one overall pick. He won the Heisman. I mean, you know the physical skills that he has. You know, with them already having him in the system, I just think they probably stick there, and that's probably where they go.
You're probably right, and the fact that Taysom Hill will be there as well. They have a guy also that they know what he can do into that system, so they have the ability to spell Winston in certain cases and things like that. It really does come down to what they saw in him this year. If they saw enough progression, if they saw enough learning in him under Drew Brees, if that's the case, then yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I'm a guy that I really want to see Winston get a fair shake. You know, he went through a lot of stuff down at Florida State, some of it of his own doing. But in my mind, it seems like he has accepted it, embraced it, and learned from it. And he was pretty good in Tampa, especially the last year. Yes, he led the league in interceptions, but he also had, he was one of the top touchdown throwers as well. So it's not like he has no talent and is just kind of going out there and making money. He seems like a guy that wants to be better and learn and be one of the best. And the fact that he took a role as the backup to Drew Brees shows you some more of that maturity of, okay, I'm willing to learn before I can be the guy again. And that's a hard thing to do from somebody that's a top pick, someone that has already led a team. That's a tough pill to swallow. And he did that. And if he gets a shot in New Orleans, I hope it goes well for him, because as much as Drew Brees and others helped kind of save New Orleans in a sense after Hurricane Katrina, and I don't mean to get political or anything like that, but if you can have a player of Jameis Winston's stature lead a team in New Orleans and be successful, that would be another thing that you can look at and go, awesome. I hope that changes things going forward.
Right.
I hope it does too. And
yeah, I totally see your point there.
Sorry, Scott, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Joe.
I understand it too, but I mean, looking at Jameis Winston's but like touchdowns to interception ratio, I think he has a little bit less touchdowns than intercept. It's something between like 50 and 50. Like when he left Tampa, what was it at, Scott or Wags? Because I think he's like a 50-50 person when it comes to touchdowns per interceptions. Is he still there, or did it go up a little bit?
I know he threw at least one
last year. He led the
year.
league in interceptions, but he also led the league in passing yards that year.
Yeah. I mean, so he's kind of a mixed bag. You'd like to see what he could do with weapons, and that's another issue with New Orleans. Who knows if they keep Michael Thomas? Yes, you're going to have Alvin Kamara. You're going to have Emmanuel Sanders, you would think. But Michael Thomas, that offense, you can say what you want about it, running through Alvin Kamara. It runs through Michael Thomas. So that's going to be interesting as well. Let's see what he can do with weapons. Go ahead, Scott. You're thinking I'm crazy. Go ahead.
No, I don't. I think you're right. The first time offense runs through Alvin Kamara. I don't think Michael Thomas. And again with the coaching staff this week, so I think Michael Thomas will be gone for New Orleans.
Wow, that would be huge. That'd be absolutely huge. Just to kind of go back to the Jameis Winston thing, just to kind of give you a rundown of his touchdown to interceptions. He's actually got a 121-88 touchdown ratio. He had 22-15 his first year, 21-18 his second year, 19-11, 19-14, and then 33-30 in 2019. Once again, he led the league in yardage, 5109. He also led the league in attempts at 626. And he led the league in yards per game with 319.3. So it's not like he's doing dipping and dunking and just letting his running backs do the job. He has an arm on him. So once again, you give him weapons, you give him time in the pocket, and you let him, like he did this year, learn under a guy like Drew Brees that can read the defenses. You might be able to see a better Jameis Winston, and that is something that should be scary to teams in the NFC South.
Yep, absolutely.
All right,
Where'd
so
Joe go?
I don't
Sorry,
know.
my computer got unplugged from my. I want to keep it charging because this computer seems to die quickly. So I'm trying to take care of that. Plus, not be too awkward doing it, which I failed there. So
you could have been more awkward. You could have fallen off your chair and then.
Well, no, you would have wanted to keep that.
Up.
You would have wanted to keep that footage. Come on, don't lie.
Of course, definitely would have kept the footage. Yeah, no question. But I don't wish that on you.
No, but you would have kept that footage because that would have gone in a blooper reel somewhere if we ever did one.
Oh boy. Well, let's keep talking about this quarterback carousel because we haven't even touched on some of these other guys. The Dak Prescott thing is another one that honestly has kind of fallen on the back burner for most of the year this year. Obviously the injury, very, very bad, and something that's definitely difficult to work back from. We did see Alex Smith come back this year from something sort of similar to that. What do you guys believe the status is of Dak Prescott in a contract extension with the Dallas Cowboys? And do you think he will even play next year?
I will let Scott handle this, being a Cowboy fan. And by the way, Scott, I got to say, I feel sorry for you, man.
I don't, like I've said a million times, that the Cowboys are a mess. So I still like the Cowboys, but yeah, they're a mess. I think Dak will probably get re-signed for this year on a really small contract, whether he plays this year or not. That's a whole nother issue. We're gonna have to wait and see as we get closer to training camp. But since we're talking about quarterback carousels, the guy that I think we may see end up in Dallas, he's a Dallas area kid. He won a state championship in Dallas. He got recruited to Georgia out of Texas, and we've already talked about him. I think Matthew Stafford goes to Dallas.
Do you see that? I mean, that could work. Let a guy go home, right, Wags?
Well, think about the success that Matthew Stafford had with a little receiver known as Megatron. He had a pretty good career with Detroit, and now all of a sudden you can go to a place where you not only have a guy like Amari Cooper, but you've got other options there as well. It's not like you have just one guy that can go up there and catch a ball. You've got multiple options. And CeeDee Lamb, that was the other guy I was trying to think of. You've got Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. You've got a running back in Ezekiel Elliott that is, if he's anything like I think he is, he's going to want to prove something next year. You put those three guys in a system with a quarterback that knows how to throw to those guys or hand the ball off to them or just run an offense, and all of a sudden the Dallas Cowboys could really run away with what's going to be a mediocre division again next year. Don't get me wrong. It's not like it's a strong division that's going to produce three potential playoff teams like the AFC North, but they could essentially lock that division down by like week 6 if they bring in a guy like Matthew Stafford. I think that would be an absolutely huge play if Dallas were able to pull that off.
Another guy that I could see going from Houston to Dallas. How about a Deshaun Watson to Dallas?
No.
Why not? Why? Why not?
The money part of it wouldn't work, for one thing.
Okay.
Money part, Dallas has seen the benefit of acquiring a bunch of first-round picks. It's going to take a couple of first-round picks to bring in a Deshaun Watson as well. And once again, we're going to get a little political in a sense, but I don't see Jerry Jones going out and getting another quarterback that has the potential to be injured in the way that Dak Prescott was injured. And it's more so about a scrambling quarterback, a quarterback that's mobile, that is, in my mind, why they wouldn't go after a guy like Deshaun Watson. Now, Jerry Jones may be thinking other ways about why he wouldn't go after Deshaun Watson, but I'll leave that to him.
Yeah.
That's his prerogative. But in my mind, I don't see Dallas going after a quarterback that essentially it's a better version of Dak Prescott, but they're going to look at it and say, okay, well, look what happened to Dak. We don't want that happening to our other guy. And if we're going to give up first-round picks for him, we want a little bit more security. It's not fair to Deshaun Watson or Dak Prescott, for that matter, but I would much rather see Deshaun Watson go somewhere else anyway. I don't want him playing for Dallas. Sorry, Scott. I know you'd love to see him in Dallas, but I think Deshaun Watson deserves a little bit better.
Yeah, I think, Dallas doesn't have the draft picks to do it either. I think legitimately there's probably only 3 teams that really have a shot at landing Deshaun Watson because they have the amount of draft picks to do it and the high picks to do it. And they're all they're the top 3 teams on his preferred list. The Jets, the Dolphins, and the Panthers. Those are the 3 teams that he's told Texas that he'd prefer to go to. They all 3 have a ton of picks early. And I think one of those 3 teams is where he ends up.
And now if the Panthers do end up trading for him, they're almost trading for what they used to have with Cam Newton. I'm talking skill set. I'm talking in terms of skill set because he's a running quarterback that can throw. You're intrigued by that, Wags. You kind of agree with me there?
Cam Newton's a running quarterback that could throw. Deshaun Watson is a quarterback who can run. I think that's the big distinction that you have to make there. Same thing with Lamar Jackson. They're both of the same ilk. They're both quarterbacks that can run. And I think we got to get out of that mindset of these guys that can be mobile. Man, would you say, and I'm not going to try and make this anything else, but would you say the same thing about Aaron Rodgers? Is Aaron Rodgers a running quarterback that can throw?
No.
Oh, well, Aaron Rodgers is a guy that runs a lot. Would you consider Josh Allen a running quarterback that can throw?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Really? Are you just saying that to prove a point?
No. Not. Because Josh Allen was the leading rusher for the Bills. I mean, that's sad.
Yeah, with 88 yards. With 88 yards, okay? It's not like he's, running for 150, 175 yards. So that's the whole thing. We take this mindset of certain quarterbacks are running quarterbacks who can throw, when really their focus is being a quarterback. They just happen to have. Would you consider Patrick Mahomes a running quarterback who can throw?
That's a tough one because he can do both and do both well.
So why can't he just be a quarterback?
You got a point.
I mean, we have to get out of the mindset that these guys are one way or the other. Yes, there are pocket passing quarterbacks, but every quarterback can run. Chad Henne proved that 2 weeks ago.
Could Tom Brady run at all in his career?
Smartly, yes. Yes. Kurt Warner could run as well. But it's the thing. They are smart about when they use their legs to run. And that's like I said, that's the mindset we have to get out of. These guys are quarterbacks. They just have different skill sets that make them dangerous in different ways. It's not that these guys can't throw. It's not that these guys can't run. It's just that they are quarterbacks that have different skill sets that maybe are highlighted differently than what we consider classic quarterbacks. And I think that's what we have to get them out of the mindset of.
Correct. Go ahead, Scott. Do you totally disagree with me, or do you think Wags is totally right?
No, what I would say, Cam was definitely a quarterback that looked to run before he looked to throw. Just because he was big and physical. Deshaun, to Wags' point, Deshaun and Lamar and Josh Allen, all three are guys that are throwing quarterbacks. They're guys that look to throw the ball first, and then if they have to scramble, they do. Although Deshaun, when you compare Deshaun to Cam or Lamar, he's way beyond either one of those two. He's got a way better arm and is just a much better passer than either one of those two guys. Deshaun could be a legitimate classic pocket passer that just stands back there and throws because he's got that kind of accuracy and arm. But so to your point, yes, he's got a little bit of the same skill set that Cam had, but he's a much better quarterback overall throwing the ball than Cam ever was.
I was just saying that in terms of skill set. I wasn't talking about the quality of quarterback. Does that make any sense?
I wasn't talking about the quality of quarterbacks either. It's once again getting out of that mindset of trying to label a specific type of player a specific type of way. They're quarterbacks, okay? They're quarterbacks. Most of them are looking to pass first. In some instances, you've got a quarterback that maybe isn't as confident in their arm, and they will look to run the ball. But in all instances, they are quarterbacks. Michael Vick was another one that he was a guy that definitely ran a lot, and he did. And Michael Vick and Cam Newton are probably closer in terms of what their style was. Vick definitely tried to run more so than he did to look to pass. But as he got older in his career, that mindset kind of changed a little bit. You could see a little bit of an evolution between being a guy that looked to run first versus a guy that looked for the pass first. When you're talking about Deshaun and Lamar and Josh and Patrick Mahomes and all these guys, you see them drop back, and you can actually see them going through their progressions. Okay, they do those types of things. That's something that Cam Newton early in his career, Michael Vick early in his career, they didn't do. They went with what they were good at and what they thought they were good at, and then they eventually learned more and more about being a quarterback. These guys, they are true quarterbacks, and it just so happens that they've got a skill set that allows them to break the prototypical mold of what people think a quarterback will do in a certain situation, and the league is still trying to essentially catch up to that. And once they do, it's going to be a really interesting change in how defenses play. But Randall Cunningham was a guy that had that same mindset as well. Great quarterback, but he had the legs to be able to make defenses think twice about what he was actually going to do.
Yeah. Randall had a cannon. He could throw the ball 80 yards in the air with the flick of his wrist. I would say Lamar is probably this generation's Michael Vick. They're both like watching a video game with the moves, the way they can move. They're once in a generation players because of their ability to run and avoid players and their speed. Like I said, Deshaun definitely more of the pocket, has the potential to be more of the pocket passer because he's got more accuracy. I would compare Deshaun in a lot of ways to RG3. RG3 ran some, but he also was a guy that looked to pass first and had a really good arm. Unfortunately, of course, he got hurt scrambling in a playoff game and was never the same. But that's kind of the guys that I would compare those guys to.
See, now I look at the Deshaun Watson, and it's an interesting comparison in my mind. I look at him kind of in the mold of like Steve Young. Steve Young didn't have necessarily the legs that a Deshaun Watson has, but he made the plays that were smart at the time. And he's got a great arm as well. I liken Watson closer to a guy like a Steve Young. But that kind of brings up a really interesting question in my mind. You talk about, Lamar being comparable to Michael Vick. Who do you guys see like a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen? What older quarterbacks do you look at those guys and go, okay, I can see this guy 20 years ago. This is who he reminds me of.
Well, and I'm gonna go two quarterbacks for Josh Allen. One that's playing and one that my dad idolized. The one that's playing, I'll have to go Aaron Rodgers because he you hear about it all the time. You watch all these broadcasts. Everyone keeps saying how much he reminds them of Aaron Rodgers, the way he, scrambles out of the pocket to find a play. And the other guy that I'd probably say is a Joe Montana, a little bit. Do you guys see that, or what do you think, Scott?
In my mind, as good as Tom Brady is, Joe, and I saw a lot of Joe Montana. I still think Joe Montana is the greatest quarterback that's ever played in this league. No, Josh Allen's different. He's bigger than Joe. If I was going to compare Josh Allen to somebody, it would be John Elway. John Elway in his early career, because Elway could run when he was younger, because he was a baseball player. He was a shortstop, but he was a big, tall guy who could run and had the cannon that Josh Allen has. Montana didn't have as strong of an arm. He was just so freaking accurate. But Elway had that cannon where he could throw it 60 yards with a flick of his wrist like Allen can. So that would be my 80s, 90s comparison to Josh Allen would be John Elway.
What about Aaron Rodgers, that comparison? Because you heard it all the time during like Monday Night Football games where they would, or Sunday Night Football games. Collinsworth would say it all the time. This is like what Aaron Rodgers would do, the scrambling quarterback. And I
can see it a little bit. I can see it a little bit. You could throw Brett in there too, because Brett was very much like that when he was young too. He would run all over the place and scramble and make plays with his legs as well as his arms. So yeah, you could compare him to both of those guys. Yeah, definitely.
Well, and speaking of the baseball connection, Twitter was a little bit of a fire today about the fact that, a lot of these guys that were former baseball players have been progressing and playing so well in the NFL, as far as being able to throw from different platforms. Preston Wilson was on Twitter earlier, but talking about that, especially with Mahomes, being able to throw from different platforms, being a former infielder, the sliding, all of that stuff is comparable. Mahomes, Russell Wilson, other guys, Kyler Murray is another one. Are we at a point now where we really have to start thinking about rolling back those specialized programs and saying, look, we got to get kids into multiple sports. This is something that is going to benefit them, whichever one they choose on down the road. Every sport they play is going to have some sort of influence in making them a better athlete in whatever sport they choose to play at some point in their life. I
agree with that.
Yeah.
Just because, sorry, Scott, but I agree with that because,
no, go ahead,
if a kid only plays one sport, he's kind of more vulnerable to injury. If you play multiple sports, you're working out multiple muscles in a sense. So, if you extract one muscle the wrong way, if you play one sport, that could ruin your entire career. You play multiple sports, you stay fresher for longer, if that makes sense. But go ahead, Scott.
No, you kind of said exactly what I was going to say. I think kids definitely benefit from playing multiple sports. You learn different skills from different sports. You work different body parts. You have less of a risk of getting injured. You have less of a risk of burning out on a sport when you play multiple things and do different things. So I totally agree with you.
What about you, Wags?
I'm right there with it. I mean, I played multiple sports growing up. My niece and nephew are playing multiple sports right now as they grow up: hockey, soccer, baseball, all of that. And yeah, it's about being able to find a way to adapt in whatever sport you're playing. And if that means pulling a move or a lesson that you learned in another sport, it's only going to make you better. And it's going to keep you from being burnt out on sports as well. I mean, you play one sport year round, specialized, you're going to get bored with it, and it's going to cause a lot of kids to quit. So yeah, I think multiple sports is definitely the best way to go. And let's go ahead and move over to Major League Baseball, because the hot stove isn't, like burning yet, but as spring training is potentially approaching,
I don't know.
we do have some stuff going on. And Scott, you shared a meme today about Yadier Molina. He put out an Instagram post as well. It seems like we might be coming close to a decision on the return of Molina, potentially Wainwright as well. Mozeliak also came out and said that things might be close and that another move might be on the way as well. Let's start with Yadi first. The tease was that he might be coming close to a decision. Do we think that actually is going to happen? And if so, is it the Cardinals or is it retirement?
there's no way Yachty's retiring. There's just no way. Especially after him sitting back watching what Tom Brady just did, Yachty's coming back.
Yachty's coming back. There's no reason to believe he's not. And he can still play at a high level, not as high as he once was. I will be honest there, but he's still going to be playing at a high level, and it's going to be for the St. Louis Cardinals. And I think he gets 2 years, $14 million. I think it's going to be $7 million AAV, or 1 year, $7 million with a $7 million option.
You talk about him not playing as well as he used to playing. I mean, he hit 262 last year, which is right in line with where he's been hitting the last couple of years. 270, 261, 273. His on-base percentage is still right around 305, 310. Slugging has definitely dipped.
What about the arm?
His home run totals. I don't know if you can accurately determine if his arm has gotten any worse because teams still don't run on him. And that's the whole thing. It doesn't matter how good your arm is. If teams are still afraid of you and don't pursue the opportunity to take bases, that's good enough for me. I mean, it's not necessarily about throwing guys out. It's about preventing teams from running. So until teams start just running all over the Cardinals and he can't do anything about it, I'm not going to be concerned about his arm or anything. Like, he's such a cerebral player. We talk about quarterbacks in the NFL. Catchers, especially Molina, are such students of the game that even when you have potentially diminished abilities, you find ways to make sure that you can still produce at a high level. And if anything, I mean, just look at the fact that Molina was on the mound last week, pitching in a game. He's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen anything that makes me think that Yachty's arm's diminished in any way, because when anybody does, like I said, nobody runs on him, but when they do, he throws them out almost every time, and usually it's not even close. Yeah. So, his catch framing has slipped a little bit. He's not getting down on a few balls as often as, a few balls get past him that wouldn't have a couple of years ago. But for the most part, I would still take Yachty over about 95% of all other catchers in baseball.
And Wags, you talk about, the Yachty situation potentially coming to a head. And I shared a tweet with you guys about this division. And I don't know if you saw it, Wags, if you want to even touch that, because I didn't know what to think after I read that. Was that a joke, or was that, go ahead, Wags, because I wanted your reactions to it. I guess we'll do it here. What'd you think?
I mean, there is no reaction. The fact that someone goes, oh, the Pirates could lose 105 games and still be in contention in the NL Central. I mean, come on. Seriously, dude.
You're right.
I mean, yes, I know that the Central has essentially given away any right to being one of the top divisions in the league, and all these teams are cutting salary. But you don't sit there and say a team that loses 105 games can still be in contention. That's just utter bullshit, and that guy should not just like the guys that talked about the Detroit Tigers winning the World Series in 3 games against the Cardinals. None of those guys should be in sports media.
What do you think, Zach? Mm-hmm. I just thought it was a little nugget, because I'm like, was that a real tweet? Like, come on. And then I saw it. I'm like, yeah, that's a real tweet. Some of the things people come up with, man. That I'm sorry I had to bring it up, man, but it's wow. Just wow.
It just shows you, that places like Twitter are where anybody can say anything stupid, and it allows them to. I just don't think that, it's basically people not doing research. It's people not, giving credit to the game or anything like that. It makes you look stupid. And yes, it definitely draws some people out of the woodwork to converse with you and maybe build your Twitter followership to see what other stupid stuff you post. But I'm going to leave that. I'm going to leave that to those people and just try and put good content out there versus anything. So let's move to some of the rumors and moves that have been going on. Obviously, George Springer signed the big deal with the Toronto Blue Jays. Michael Brantley going back to Houston. But there are 4 top free agents still out there: JT Realmuto, Trevor Bauer, Marcell Ozuna, Justin Turner. The news coming down today that Major League Baseball Players Association has essentially turned down the proposed universal DH and expanded playoffs. Kind of makes you go, that means guys like Ozuna may not sign for any time soon. But what are you guys' thoughts on these 4 guys still being out there, and are we getting to a point of no return when it comes to them being signed and getting into camp at a reasonable time?
The more I watch it, the more I see what's going on. I think you're going to see a lot of guys sign in spring training. Whenever that happens, and maybe you may see guys signing in March. Honestly, I think because this DH thing's not going to be resolved because they're going to, this was a negotiating ploy because the players union want more of a give from the owners than just the DH to give them the expanded playoffs. So, there's going to be give and take. I still think the DH is going to happen, but we may not know that until the middle of February or the end of February. So I think you're going to see guys like Rosario and Cruz and probably Ozuna, some of those guys that are more DH type players. I think they're all still going to be sitting there.
All right. More than likely, if you think this is a negotiating ploy, which I think it is too, more likely to come here, Rosario or Cruz. I'm leaving Ozuna out of this because I've asked that question before, and you guys have resoundingly said no, he's not coming back here.
I never said that he was not coming back here.
Well, Scott did. Sorry, not you, but Wags. Okay, for your sake, then I'll put Ozuna back in there. Ozuna, Rosario, or Cruz. One of those 3 guys. Who's more likely to come here?
Can I say none of them because I don't think the Cardinals would sign him?
No, I mean, come on. Yeah, I can agree with that also. But if you had to pick one, if the DH comes, you'd think they'd have to get a bat for the DH role unless you wanted to put Matt Carpenter there and play Tommy Edman at third, which is completely possible with this team.
I'd go with Ozuna. I really would. I think the relationship he has with Yadier Molina, I think the fact that he didn't necessarily push his way out of St. Louis. I think if one of those 3 were to be signed by the Cardinals with the DH in play, I think it would be an Ozuna, but I just don't think the Cardinals would be able to match the salary because you're going to have teams that once the DH gets confirmed, they're going to be like, oh, hey, we're going to go after Ozuna because we know that he doesn't have to play the field and he can hit some home runs. So it definitely would be very, very difficult to bring him in. But of all 3, I think the Cardinals would go after Ozuna because they know what they would have in him. They saw what he could bring to St. Louis. So I would go with Ozuna if the DH was here and the Cardinals actually went out and made a move.
Scott?
If I had to pick, I don't think it's going to be Marcell Ozuna because part of the reason he hasn't gotten signed is because he wants between 4 and 6 years and upwards of $120 million. So Cardinals aren't doing that. If I had to guess, I would say it's Nelson Cruz because he's the one that being 40, you're going to get him on a 1-year deal, probably with the lowest AAV because he's only a DH. Rosario would be the one that I would want the most because he's left-handed. But I'd be okay with Nelson Cruz hitting 40 home runs in that lineup for a year.
I'd be pretty cool with Nelson Cruz winning a World Series with the Cardinals.
Redemption, right?
I mean,
the last time the Cardinals won a World Series was 2011 with him on the field. So,
well, we've had a history of bringing in guys that
killed the Cardinals,
just missed out and came here and won. So, I mean, I'd be fine with it. If Nelson Cruz were to come here as the DH and the Cardinals were to win the World Series, I would be perfectly fine. I'd be perfectly fine with him catching the last out in the outfield of that World Series if that were the case. Like, I'd almost put him out there in right field and hope they hit it to him for that final out.
I will say, we laugh saying, will the Cardinals do anything? I will say in Mozeliak's comments this week, he did mention getting close with Yadi and Ueno, and then also did say he thought he was going to be able to do something besides that and get it done in the near future. So I think they will bring in a bat. It's going to be really interesting. And if you look at the free agents that are left, the guys that we've talked about all offseason being possible fits for the Cardinals are all still there. We talk about Ozuna, we talk about Rosario, you talk about Cruz, You talk about guys like Tommy LaStella, Jonathan Scope, all of those guys are still sitting there. So the Cardinals are going to have their choice of which one of those guys they want to go after.
Well, I like your point that you made a couple shows ago about the fact that the Cardinals will probably sign, a lower tier guy like an outfielder that can come in, and it still sets up for them to possibly go out and get a big bat at the deadline. And that makes a lot of sense, especially considering the Cardinals are anticipating having fans in the stands at least early on. A small amount, as small as 8,000 can actually be, but they're going to have fans in the stands, so they're going to start to see some of that revenue coming back in, and it's a matter of what they're going to do outside of that to bring in more revenue. So it does set up to allow them to be competitive early on and yet still be able to make that big move at the deadline that will push them over the top. And as much as I've given them crap, and we've all given them crap about not making any moves, if that's the plan that they go with, and the season starts out the way we hope it does, where they bring in some of these, lower, I wouldn't say lower tier guys because they're still Major League Baseball players, but, not the big name talent, but they bring them in, they produce at the time that they're here, they get us to that deadline mark, and the Cardinals are in first place and they're looking decent, and they go out and make that big move. I'm going to be okay with that because it definitely will show me that they were thinking long term, the long play. And as hard as that is sometimes to sit there and do that, it would actually rebuild my trust with the Cardinals management. Whereas Doug Armstrong's built a lot of trust with me as far as being the Blues GM and the moves he's made of late. That trust in the Cardinals management will have been restored in a sense if that's what ends up happening. The long play actually plays out, and this is what goes down. I will have some trust back with the Cardinals management.
Yeah, I will too. And, I think that's the Cardinals, Mozeliak, DeWitt, those guys realize that they have to make a big move here soon because they're not stupid. They see what fans are saying. They follow that stuff. They monitor it. They know they're going to have to make some moves. And, you go back again to the fact that, as you get to the offseason, $60 million are coming off the books. So, and fans know that. So they're going to have to make a move and invest that money back into the ball club.
They're going to have to. And I'm not saying you pay guys for upwards of 10 years. I mean, I don't like those deals. I like the 5 or 6 year deals. It's kind of like the deal that Matt Holliday signed. The 7-year deal, he was at 31 when it started, and he didn't really seem to degress at all. I mean, yes, a little bit, but he always seemed consistent. That's what I want to see the Cardinals do. Now, you're not going to hit like that every time with every deal. And that's where I think Mozeliak and company, I think they're a little scared right now. Is that easy to, or is that fair to say they're kind of scared right now with all the bad moves they've made over the years and all the, and this comes to mind, he's not even on the team anymore, didn't even finish out his term, and that would be Ty Wigginton. That's the name that always comes up in my mind. This was a guy that, coming in, you thought, what, he could do some good things for the Cardinals. I mean, he was good, and I think it was Baltimore, and, he wasn't the guy that we thought he was going to be. And I think since then, the Cardinals have been scared to sign players. Is that wrong? I mean, not scared, but tentative.
I don't think that's necessarily the case. Ty Wigginton was the only real failure. That he's the only guy that they've actually terminated the deal with. Everybody else, they've kind of played it out. And yeah, maybe they didn't go out and re-sign the guy when his contract was up, but they've still gone out and made moves. It's not like they said, Ty Wigginton didn't work out. We're not going to trade for a Marcell Ozuna. We're not going to trade for sign a Dexter Fowler. We're not going to go out there and trade for a Paul Goldschmidt. I mean, I think their evaluations maybe have been a little wrong in some cases, but you also have to look at the talent of the pool of players available as well. This is a perfect case is Dexter Fowler. At the time, the Cardinals fans were clamoring for a big move. Okay. Dexter Fowler was the one guy that was going to come to St. Louis, and he was one of the big names on the market. So he was going to command the most money because people were going to start paying it. So you can't look at one of these in a prism and then say that's how it is for everything else going forward. You have to look at kind of each individual case every year. Who's available? what the market's like. Who are the guys willing to come to St. Louis? David Price should have been in St. Louis. Giancarlo Stanton probably should have been in St. Louis. That's not how it worked out because they didn't necessarily want to be here. Other teams offered more money, but you can't look at one piece and go, that's going to define the next 10 years. Yes, maybe they've made some moves that are questionable, but at the time you looked at it and it was the move that kind of had to be made.
Go ahead, Scott.
Well, and how lucky are we that David Price and Giancarlo Stanton didn't come to St. Louis, because it's not like those deals that they signed really worked out well.
Agreed. Agreed. But no, do you see this? Hesitation there, Scott? Do you see where I'm coming from when I said that?
Yeah, to a certain extent. I don't know that Ty Wigginton's the guy. I think the hesitation right now is they're looking at guys that they've moved, guys like Luke Voigt and Randy Arozarena, guys like that, and they're going, oh my God, how can we move our prospects? Because look what happens when we send them somewhere else. I don't think Luke Voigt would have done what he's done in New York and St. Louis. We've talked about that before because of that ballpark at Yankee Stadium. And, everybody wants to talk about, oh my God, you traded Randy Arozarena. He had 3 weeks. Let's see what he does for a whole season before we decide that Randy Arozarena is the greatest thing ever. And don't forget, Matthew Liberatore is going to be a stud.
Okay.
Everybody forgets that because he's not up here yet. Liberatore is going to be a stud in that rotation for a long time.
Yeah, I agree. And other people bring up Tommy Pham. Well, Tommy Pham's a guy that can't stay healthy. He's dealt with a lot of issues. He's been on 3 teams in the last 3 or 4 years. So it's, you can't look at small snippets and be like, oh, we missed out. I mean, what was the guy in Cleveland that had the All-Star year?
Right.
And everybody's like, oh, why did we let him go? Well, guess what? He didn't even play last year. So you got to be subjective. You got to look at a large sum of time to really get a really clear indication of talent. And yeah, those hurt in the moment, and especially when you don't make the playoffs or you flame out early and another guy has success. But all you got to do is sit back and congratulate them because they did their part for their team, and that's what happens. And the Cardinals have had that a lot in their history as well. So I'm sure there are other teams. And someone brought up earlier, I think it was Frankie, the Lou Brock trade from Chicago. I'm sure Cubs fans are like, what the hell, man? What did you do? Why did you trade him? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, it happens to every organization. There's going to be guys that get away. They're going to be successful. And yes, sometimes it's success for a rival, and that's going to happen. But you can't dwell on it. You can't get down in the dumps about it. It's going to happen. That's the beauty of sports. I mean, look how many, up until this past year or so, look how many minor league teams that teams had associations with. Look how many minor league players were playing. You're going to have those diamonds in the rough that pop up that no one has even heard about. I mean, come on, Albert Pujols.
Right.
For a period of time, I know for a period of time, he kind of flamed out after Jeremy Hazelbaker.
I mean, that's another case, though. It was a short time frame. It was a couple of months. It wasn't the full season. It wasn't a couple of seasons. It was a short period of time. And sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need a guy that's going to go on a hot streak for a few weeks. Bo Hart, Joe McEwing. Yep. I mean, there's a whole stable of them with the Cardinals. So come on.
Yeah. And people always want to say, oh, the Cardinals gave Luke Voigt away. The Cardinals gave Randy Arozarena away. Well, look what you got for Luke Voigt. Giovanni Gallegos has been pretty darn good. People talk about the Tommy Pham trade. Genesis Cabrera looks like he's going to be a good piece of this pitching staff for a while. So the Cardinals have gotten guys that are making impacts. They're just not the big names quite yet that those other guys are.
Who do we get Junior Fernandez for? I know he was a trade, wasn't he?
No, they drafted him.
Okay. I'm wrong then. Okay.
It's okay. It's okay to be wrong. All right, let's jump segments again, and let's talk about the NCAA basketball season. We've had some pauses, some restarts with some teams. SLU getting underway again tonight against Dayton. Mizzou also has a matchup tonight. They are playing in Auburn before hosting TCU in the Big 12 SEC Challenge on Saturday. top 25 rankings came out again today, as they do every Monday. And once again, all three local teams are in the top 25. You've got SLU at number 22, despite not playing for over a month. They have yet to play a conference game. They're the only ranked team in the A10, despite not playing a conference game. Their last game, 12-23 against UMKC. Illinois had a little bit of a tough January. They had a couple of games postponed. They lost to Ohio State and Maryland. They did beat Purdue twice. They've got a big stretch coming up here in February. 4 of their games are against teams that are currently ranked. And then you've got the Mizzou Tigers. Okay, the Mizzou Tigers lost earlier this month to Mississippi State. Kind of a crushing loss because they were ranked 13 at the time. But then they win 3 straight, Texas A&M, South Carolina, and then just yesterday, or just 2 nights ago, number 6 Tennessee. They go down to Rocky Top and they beat Tennessee, puts them at second in the SEC behind the surprise in Alabama, and jumps them back up into the number 12 spot in the top 25. Guys, are we living in a golden age right now of college basketball for local talents, or what, man?
This is fun to watch. I mean, I didn't get to see that Tennessee game, but I was going into that when I knew that matchup was coming up. I'm like, this could be a stepping stone for Mizzou to see what they do in terms of staying with Tennessee. Then I found out they beat Tennessee, and I'm like, wow. So, look, the sky's the limit for this Mizzou team. As for SLU, we knew this SLU team was going to be good 2 years ago. I mean, we knew this was coming. Travis Ford was laying the groundwork for that. And who's a better coach right now? Travis Ford or Conzo Martin? In the area, who's a better coach right now?
You're gonna leave Brad Underwood out of the conversation?
Okay, no, Brad Underwood, Travis Ford, or Conzo Martin. Go ahead, guys.
They're all 3 good coaches. They all have different. They have all 3 have different styles, different tendencies. So it's really hard to say which one's the best coach. Travis and Conzo both had success in multiple places, but I think all 3 of them are really good coaches.
Yeah, it's hard to choose between the 3. I think they, like Scott said, they all have their own styles. I mean, look what Brad Underwood had to overtake in Illinois, and to get them back onto the map as quickly as he has, that's very, very impressive. To see what Conzo has had to take from Mizzou as far as, the legal issues and things like that, as far as, the stuff that had been previously to him being here to get Mizzou where they're at, and having to play a bunch of freshmen a couple of years ago. I mean, he's done a lot as well. And then Travis Ford, I mean, SLU is very underrepresented in the area as far as, talking about college basketball, but they're in a very winnable conference. He's he's recruited locally. He's gotten some very, very big name talent to bypass places like Mizzou in Illinois, among others. So that's a testament to his recruiting as well. And he's built a really good system carrying on the legacy of Rick Majerus. So, yeah, it's hard to choose between the 3. I don't think you can choose between the 3. I just look at the fact that we have 3 very, very deserving head coaches and programs in the area that deserve a lot more recognition than they're getting right now.
Yeah. The thing that I find interesting is, how did SLU go up 3 spots this week? When they haven't played for a month.
When you are idle and everybody else falls down, I guess means you go up. The system that they use to determine top 25 rankings is very interesting. With RPI and all the stuff that goes into it. You have to look at maybe the teams that they, like an NC State, a team that they beat earlier this year. Maybe they jumped up a little bit in their record or rankings. The same thing with Minnesota, who they lost to. Maybe they jumped up a little bit, so that rises the top. Good losses and good wins help you rise up a little bit. Right. So, yeah, I mean, I'll take it as long as we possibly can. And I wouldn't be shocked if SLU continues to rise up in the rankings now that they're getting back into action, because like we said, they are a very good team. They've got some good local talent. I mean, just look at a guy like Jordan Goodwin, 31 and a half minutes a game, just under 17 points a game, 11 rebounds a game, 3.8 assists, and 2.1 steals. Obviously, not averaging a triple-double or anything like that, but the fact that he has those kind of stats across the board makes you go, wow, this is a player that if he were playing in a Duke, a North Carolina, who, yes, none of those teams are ranked right now, but at a blue blood kind of school, he might be a player that's in that National Player of the Year conversation because of what he brings to this team. And he's not even the leading scorer on SLU this year. Okay, that's Javonte Perkins. So his leadership abilities and his play across the board make Goodwin a guy that people should take notice of. And I hope he gets some national attention as the year continues to go.
Yeah, I think he will. You know, SLU's got so much talent.
SLU has a lot of talent, and you know, I could see going forward after Perkins. I could see next year a guy like Yuri, and
here it is again. I knew that was going to happen. I knew that was who you're going to bring up.
Well, do you understand why? I mean, this kid tore the house down at St. Mary's, and now he's doing the same with SLU. I mean, he's only going to continue to get better and better.
I mean, he's a good player, but he's only averaging like 6.6 a game right now. I mean, maybe that's because he's not getting maybe he's not getting the opportunities yet. But you talk about he's tearing down the house at SLU. No, he's not.
I said he tore down the house at St. Mary's.
And then you said he's doing the same thing right now.
I said, come when he's a junior or senior, when he'll get more playing time, he'll tear the house down at SLU. I'm telling you.
I mean, that's not what you said. But...
Well, okay. I just believe in this kid so much.
He's getting a lot of playing time. He's their starting point guard. I will say though, he does have the best assist to turnover rate in the NCAA right now. So you have to give him that.
Yeah, and I'm not downplaying his ability. I think, he is going to be a very good ball player. He is a sophomore, so he does still have some room to grow. But at this point right now, he's not the focus of the team. He's averaging right around 30-ish minutes a game right now. He's shooting about 48% from the field, only 2 of 10 from 3, but that's not necessarily his game. He does have some decent rebound totals as well. 19 defensive rebounds on the year. Assist to turnover ratio, like you said, 58 assists to 14 turnovers, 15 steals, averaging 6.1 points a game. But once again, when you've got the offense that's going through guys like Perkins and Goodwin and Jimerson, you don't necessarily have to put up a ton of points. I think the big thing for him will be to see what his progression is like next year, like you said, Joe, when he's a junior and maybe the focus of the offense is more directed towards him to see what he's able to bring. The one thing that's maybe, I wouldn't say going against him, he is only 6 foot, so it's not like he's a real big player, and that may hurt him in the long run. But once again, what he did at St. Mary's was phenomenal, and I think it was a great recruit by Travis Ford. I think he's going to be a great ambassador for SLU come the next couple of years. But right now, this is a Perkins, Goodwin, Jimerson type of team, and I'm okay with that because they're doing very, very well.
I love the fact that we're seeing these local guys go to local colleges. You didn't really see that probably back 5, 6, 7 years ago. You did not see that, and now you're seeing it. What do you think is being said in these meetings, guys, that is kind of persuading these big time recruits to forego Alabama, not Mizzou, Alabama, Ohio State, these big time schools? What do you think is being said in these meetings?
For SLU, the biggest thing is you have Travis Ford walking in a room. You're talking about a guy who, as a player, went to an Elite 8 team at Mizzou, and then when there was trouble at Mizzou, transferred to Kentucky and went to 3 Final Fours and won a national championship. And then he's been successful everywhere he's been as a coach since then. When he went back to Kentucky as an assistant, then he went to Oklahoma State, and now here. So, I mean, just the pedigree that Travis Ford has, the name recognition that he has, brings a lot. Kids want to play for him. You know, he's the perfect guy for Yuri Collins to learn under. Travis being an unbelievable point guard on those Mizzou and Kentucky teams. Yuri Collins couldn't have a better head coach to teach him and help him out and learn from. And at Mizzou, you've got the same kind of thing with Konzo. Konzo's been successful everywhere he's been. You know, he's got cred. And, you know, and when he goes into St. Louis, he's an East St. Louis kid. So he comes from the same area. He knows what these kids have experienced and what they've gone through. So those are the things that help both of those programs.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And it helps that these programs are starting to become successful again, too. And in Mizzou's case, especially, you know, you're successful in the SEC, which, as far as football is concerned, the biggest conference in the country. When you have success there, that's going to bring in recruits. And yeah, you can sit there and say SEC basketball maybe isn't the pinnacle of college basketball, but you've got a blue blood in Kentucky there. You've got the pedigree of a Tennessee. Now you've got the surprise of Alabama, and you know you could still wrestle people away because they may go to Alabama and play football and basketball and take that title and say I've played at Alabama. But now you've got that to where you can say, hey, we compete and beat these teams. We are one of the tops in one of the top conferences in the country. Stay close to home, be near your family, and still be highly competitive and have a chance at a national championship. That's really what matters to some of these athletes. And yes, an education is a big part of it as well. But some of these guys that are going, and you're starting to see it, especially in the NFL draft, you're seeing Mizzou players getting drafted in the second round and the first round too. So when you have the ability to say, hey, look, we've got 5 former first round picks in the last 7 years, that's gonna make some alarm bells go off in some guys' minds that I could be the guy at this position and get in a first round pick. You go to an Alabama, yes, you got guys that will say, I will sit for 2 years behind a starter just to be the starter in my junior year and win a national championship and get drafted. But there are some guys that don't have that time. And if you can, portray to these guys that you will be at the top of your position and you have a chance of going in the first round within 2 years of you being there, and you don't have to sit behind anybody, that might be more attractive to some of these guys that have gone and grown up in these situations where they may not have the time to sit behind a guy for 2 years to get the shot at being the starter and a number 1 pick. So there's a lot of different pieces that go into it. And the fact that you've got very, very passionate, strong-willed, and stand-up men in these positions also lend a lot of credence to these conversations.
Yeah. Jump in sports for just a second, talking about being St. Louis kids that go to Mizzou and have a chance to win a championship. You guys realize that Blaine Gabbert could be a Super Bowl champion in 2 weeks?
Oh, my goodness.
He's Tom Brady's backup in Tampa.
God, isn't it such a great job? You get to learn under the greatest of all time. And, well, minus Joe Montana. Okay, I get that. One of the greatest of all time. And you don't have to do anything but learn under him, and you can win title after title after title. I mean, come on. How sweet of a gig is that?
Well, I mean, you have to follow him. I mean, it's not like Gabbert's been his backup in New England for the last couple of years and gotten the rings. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Look at Chase Daniel. I mean, if you want to look at a guy that has totally got the system down, it's Chase Daniel. I mean, he's played in 5 games in his career, and yet he's made probably close to $60-70 million, and he's gotten play behind some pretty darn good quarterbacks too.
Well, he won a Super Bowl his rookie year in New Orleans as Drew Brees' backup.
God, it's been that long since he's first entered the league. My God. I mean, I remember these kids going to Mizzou and having great careers at Mizzou. My God.
It makes you feel old, doesn't it?
Yes, and you're older than me. So, ouch.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing that made me feel really old was watching Robert Thomas lift the Stanley Cup at 19 years old and going, damn, I'm 33. What have I done with my life? and speaking of the Blues, let's jump over to the NHL. The Blues wrapped up a very up and down week once again as they split their series with the San Jose Sharks and the LA Kings, collecting points in 3 of the 4 games. It's been a rocky start to the season, obviously. The win on opening night against Colorado, then the 8-0 debacle. Then you had the San Jose series and now the LA series. They've kind of alternated wins and losses. I'm not getting scared yet. I'm not in panic mode at this point in time, but 6 games into the season, where are you guys sitting at as far as your confidence level in the St. Louis Blues?
I basically answered it, Wags, like this. I answered it last night basically because I said this defense is soft. Their power play, while I'll give it more time, they scored a goal last night. I'll give it more time, but this isn't the same. And you're under a different coach, Jim Montgomery, and I get it. It's going to take some time for that power play to, materialize. And you got a lot of new forwards, a lot of new defensemen. So it's almost like the season where the Blues really we thought the Blues were Stanley Cup contenders in 19 at the beginning, and they just were a train wreck. Hopefully it's not that bad because you can't suck that bad early in the season and expect to come back. I mean, that's rarely happens. And plus, you're only playing 56 games.
So wait. You can't go into last place more than halfway through the season, make an epic comeback, and win a Stanley Cup.
Through 28 games in this division, I don't know. I don't know because we're seeing teams like the LA Kings that we didn't think were going to be good this year. They look pretty dang decent.
I mean, it's 6 games into the season. I
know, but who would have thought even 6 games into the season we'd be talking about a Kings team that has surprised people.
Is still 1 point behind the Blues after 6 games.
Where are the Blues in the standings at this point? Even though it's 6 games,
third place. Vegas is at number 1. Minnesota's at 8 points and one point ahead of the Blues, who are at 7. Colorado's at 6 points. So, yeah, I don't look at Buffalo last year. Buffalo jumped out to an epic start last year, and I'm pretty sure they missed the playoffs.
You got a point there, Wags. But do you guys echo my sentiments of this defense leaves a lot to be desired? And Vince Dunn, the guy we talk about all the time, he's being the whooping boy now. Last year was Justin Falk, and Justin Falk could very well be, by the year's end, your best defenseman, in my mind. Vince Dunn looks like he doesn't belong on this team. So do you guys agree it's soft, or am I just speaking out of my head here?
Well, you've got a different defensive team than you've had in the last few years. You've got more of an offensive-minded defensive group. And they're still trying to come together. You got a bunch of guys. I mean, you got a lot of new guys that basically had 2 weeks of training camp and no preseason games that they're trying to figure this all out. It's 6 games. Everybody just needs to relax.
Yep.
They're going to be fine. It may take a while. Like I told Joe, I think it's probably going to take 2 or 3 weeks for them to figure it out, maybe even a month before they really get into a rhythm, just because they're trying to learn new systems and each other and everything else. But I think they eventually will be fine.
And I said this last night, that last night's game essentially wrapped up the preseason for me. 6 games, preseason is usually right around that amount as well. And yes, these games count and you need to get points. And the Blues have gotten points in all but 2 of the games. They've gotten points in 4 of 6. So they're still sitting at 7 points, 3rd place in the West Division. You have to realize that, as Scott said, they had 2 weeks of training camp. They brought in guys like Mike Hoffman. Torrey Krug is new to the lineup. You've got other guys that are new into this lineup. And we saw in 2019 how hard it was to get all of those guys, because there had a lot of new players in 2019. I mean, we think we have new players now. We had a boatload of new players in 2019, and it took a half a season before that team really started to get together. This year, you've added a couple of pieces, and yes, you don't have a Vladimir Tarasenko, so that piece is missing as well. But it's going to take a shorter amount of time for this team to start getting together and gelling. I'm like Scott, 3-4 weeks into the season, if we're at that point and this team is still alternating wins and losses, that's when I start getting worried. If the defense doesn't start to solidify as to who's playing with who, that's going to be a big piece as well. Vince Dunn does need to step up. He's a guy that we've been writing for the last couple of years of he just hasn't progressed and grown in his abilities. He's still putting pucks into guys' skates on the power play when he's the last man back. We've seen the progression of a guy like Colton Parayko. Yes, they're not the same players. They're wildly different defensemen, but you just haven't seen any sort of growth from Vince Dunn where you've seen growth from Colton Parayko. And there's a reason why Parayko's on the top pair and Dunn is still mired down in that third pair with really no confidence to get him into a higher level. He's getting beat by guys that are on the third and fourth line. If he's getting beaten by those guys, why would you even put him up there against some of the top talent in the league? That's my question. And it just gives us more credence to start a guy like Nico Mikkola and get him in there because he's looked very solid the couple of games that he's been in. It's really about Berube finding the guys that work well together. I think you're going to see a move with Mike Hoffman. I think he's going to move up and play with O'Reilly and Schwartz at some point. I think you're going to have a guy like Zach Sanford have to drop down and play with Robert Thomas and Tyler Bozak. It's about finding the right chemistry with these guys, and the lines are still being juggled, and we'll see it happen at some point, and they're going to get together. And you're going to bring up, Ville Husso looked bad last night, and he looked bad against Colorado. Come on. There was no defense. I mean, there was a great picture last night of that breakaway by Elias Anderson. That pretty much was what Ville Husso was looking at the last two times he's been in net. Opposing players bearing down on him with no defense in front of him. So don't judge Ville Husso on 2 games. Yes, there are some goals that he needed to, stop. But they were also the same goals that Jake Allen was giving up as well. And we, myself included, have been clamoring for the fact that we should have kept Jake Allen. So if we should have kept Jake Allen and Ville Husso's letting in the same type of goals as Jake Allen, maybe we should rethink and evaluate what we actually have in a guy like Ville Husso.
Now, I do want to ask you this. Now, I was playing online last night, and one of my buddies that I play with, he brings up a good point. Ville Husso looked like a guy last night that didn't have confidence. Did you see that watching this game?
I wouldn't say he doesn't have confidence. I think he's got, it's more so of not having confidence in the team in front of you.
Right. That's
and it's not his fault. It's the fact that the team hasn't played defense in front of him.
Okay.
And I'm sure there's some nerves. That was his first start in the NHL last night.
Yeah, there are some nerves, and he made some decent saves last night. He played a really good first period. Second period was so-so. Or second period, it all went to crap from there, but you can't blame it all on Husso. So he had one good period. First start in the NHL. I'm not too upset.
I think he had a good third period too, especially when the Blues. Think about it. He didn't have to stop as many shots in the third period because the Blues actually turned it on in the third period. They scored 2 goals in that period, had a chance at a couple more. And once again, just as in the case of Jordan Binnington, in the case of Jake Allen, when the Blues play their game, they limit the amount of shots an opponent has on the net. And when a goaltender has enough work to stay in rhythm, but not so much that he gets overwhelmed, you're going to see the true worth of a goaltender. And we've seen so far Jordan Binnington has actually kind of risen above his station at the moment. He's played phenomenally in all those games outside of Colorado. Once again, you can't really necessarily lay that on him or Ville Husso because it was just a total lack of team effort. But Jordan Binnington's played very, very well this year. He's kept the team in a lot of games, but you can't expect him to do that the entire season. You have to start playing some defense in front of him. I guarantee you, if the Blues play their style of hockey and they are limiting teams to 20 to 24 shots a game, I bet you Jordan Binnington has a good win-loss record, and I bet you Ville Husso has a good win-loss record. I really, really do, because that means the Blues are controlling play. They're limiting the shots, and that's the other part of it. It may not just be the 20 to 24 shots. It's where those shots come from, too. If those shots are coming from the perimeter, your odds of increase that you're going to stop the puck. When you've got shots coming from the slot or right in front of the net, the likelihood that those are going in
absolutely
goes way, way up. So it's all about the Blues playing their style of play. And if they can do that, the goaltenders will show you what they're worth.
Yeah, well, these Blues need to play exponentially better come Tuesday and Thursday because you got Vegas. And if they don't play better than they did against LA, even in the win, Vegas is gonna run roughshod over this St. Louis team.
Vegas lost to Arizona earlier this week. So
any team can beat any team on any given night.
Really?
Yes.
So that means the Blues can beat Vegas.
West.
But if the Blues don't both of those games.
Yeah, but if the Blues don't execute, and there are certain things they have to execute to beat teams like that they're not executing on a consistent basis, then they will get beat by Vegas.
Who's to say that Vegas doesn't go out and not execute on certain instances? But once again, they lost to Arizona, and like you said, any team could beat any team. Anaheim beat Colorado last night. Colorado's a Stanley Cup favorite. They're sitting at 3-3, 1 point behind the Blues right now. And I have it on good authority that there are Avs fans that are in the same sort of situation the Blues fans are in right now, questioning what this team and what their team is all about right now. So, yes, I want the Blues to get up for these games against Vegas. You're going up against your former captain. It's definitely a rivalry in the making. I want to see the Blues go out there and perform at a high level, but don't just totally dismiss it offhand if they go out and play poorly, because once again, we're coming out of essentially the preseason. And how well do teams play the first couple of games outside of preseason? Well, the first 3 or 4 weeks of any season is rough on teams. You're going to have teams that come out of the woodwork and play really, really well. Like I said, Buffalo, Edmonton was another one that came out last year very, very well. But then eventually teams are going to regress to their means, and the teams that are going to be the cream of the crop will start to rise. So once again, it's a shortened season. I get it. 56 games is not a long time. But right now, the Blues are in third place. They've scored goals. They've shown the ability at times to prevent goals from going in. The penalty kill is getting better. They need to stop taking dumb penalties. I get that. But you can see work going on in the heads of the players, and you also don't see bickering back and forth, okay? Berube has control of the locker room. The players know what they need to do, and if they don't do that, Berube is going to bench them. It's plain and simple.
Very well said, man. I just get nervous around these times because you're playing another Stanley Cup favorite in the Vegas Golden Knights. That's why I get a little worried when you're coming into a series like this, like, playing well, but not really playing well, So I think I'll be on the edge of my seat for both of these games, Tuesday and Thursday. I'll just put it that way.
Let's get Scott's opinion on this because we kind of left him out on this.
Go ahead, Scott.
And just calm down, Joe. Just remember, like we've been saying this whole time, it's early. They're still trying to come together. Don't panic if they lose both of these games. Hopefully they don't, but it's not the end.
Oh, no, I hope he didn't freeze. I think he froze. I think Scott froze. If you can hear us, Scott, you froze up on us. We can't hear anything right now. So we'll keep the conversation rolling for a couple of minutes. Hopefully you can get back in here. But once again, the Blues are taking on the Vegas Golden Knights coming up Tuesday and Thursday before heading over to Anaheim for a 2-game set. Going to be a very interesting week in hockey for sure for the Blues. Hopefully you can get Mike Hoffman really rolling. He got a goal earlier in the Sharks series. Torrey Krug got his first goal with the Blues as well. So you're seeing guys that are getting used to playing in St. Louis and with their teammates. Now they're starting to put some pucks in the net. Braden Shen leads the team with 4 goals. Jordan Kyrou, let's talk a little bit about him real quick because he's leading the team in scoring. 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points this year. Mm-hmm. I think he's taken Berube's comments to heart. He is fast out there. He has got a defensive mindset. He is playing the best I have seen Jordan Kyrou play consistently. He had moments last year where you're like, oh, this could be something. But it's been game in and game out of consistent play from Jordan Kyrou this year. Once again, you can't get too high on 6 games on the other side of things. It's going to be very, very interesting. And I hope that we are able to have Jordan Kyrou play like this the entire year.
Me too. Jordan Kyrou is looking like an absolute stud out there in the ice right now. And, I, for one, saw this coming. And I saw his speed a little bit. There was a game against Colorado I was at where he went from center ice and wrapped around to score a goal. And I'm like, yeah, this is the real deal. This is Jordan Kyrou, what Jordan Kyrou is going to be. There was an instance earlier in his career. I know his career is early as it is, but early in his career where he just wasn't passing the puck. He would lose the puck easily, and Berube got on him. And now, like you said, he's taken that to heart. He's worked his butt off on the defensive end. Didn't really do that a lot in junior because he always had the puck. But now you're seeing it well-rounded Jordan Kyrou. And I think this is the kind of guy that's going to be around for a long time in St. Louis.
The one thing, and this is what, once again, I'll caution everybody on getting too high on the kid. We have to remember he isn't playing, top line minutes right now. So he's not necessarily going up against the top defenders or the top forward defensemen in the game right now. He's taking advantage of who he's going up against. I'll definitely say that he's not shying away from who he's playing, but I want to see him in the top 6 minutes going up against better defenders, better forwards, before I really sit there and go, okay, I like what I'm seeing. I mean, I like the consistency. I really, really do. And I hope that consistency allows him to continue to rise up the lines to get into the top 6, because, we talk about a guy like Zach Sanford, and while he hasn't played poorly this year, he's another one of those streaky kind of players that, if he doesn't pot a goal here in the next game or two, he may go 15, 16 games before he nets a goal. And if the Blues are winning, you don't care about that as much. But if the Blues go on a prolonged losing streak, all of a sudden fingers start to get pointed, and all of a sudden you don't know what you actually have in a guy like Zach Sanford. And he may be a guy that needs to drop down to that third line, get some confidence, get a couple of points to really get himself going. And if Jordan Kyrou is able to rise up to that level and maybe play on that second line with a Perron and a Schwartz, or a Perron and Shen, and still be able to produce at that level, all of a sudden you've got another piece in your pocket that can go, all right, we've got another guy we can pair with people, and it just makes another line that much more dangerous.
Now, can I ask you, Wags, when you say not getting exactly top line minutes and not seeing better forwards, I think all hockey players are good in their own way. You know what I mean? Like, certain guys know their role players. What do you mean by that? Because you could see a really good third line. Like, the Blues have 3 really good lines. So
I think the Blues have 4. I think the Blues have 4 really good lines.
What do you mean by that? By, going down, getting confidence? What is he facing? Bad players? What do you mean by that? Can you explain yourself a little bit?
I mean, look at the batting order. I mean, when you look at the bottom half of a batting order, 7, 8, and 9 batters, are they as good as your 2, 3, 4 hitters?
No.
I mean, it's the same concept. Not saying that they're bad players, but look at Alexander Steen. He had lost a step. So what does he do? They put him on the 4th line. He's a mentor. He's a guy that, is playing less minutes. That's the whole point of it, too. I mean, they're playing less minutes.
Okay.
So, their opportunities are fewer and farther between. They're also going up against, lesser talented players. They're going up against other lines that are made up of the same way. It's the gritty grinders, it's the veterans, it's things like that. So you put a guy like a Zach Sanford, who's a little bit younger, has some speed, has a little bit more quickness with the hands, and you put him on the third line going up against maybe a line of veterans. Yes, he's walking a veteran versus a guy that is the same speed as him, but he gets that confidence by scoring a couple goals on the third line. He goes, okay, yeah, my moves really do work. Then he goes back up to one of those top lines, tries those moves again, has that confidence, and he makes it work there. Then all of a sudden, he's got confidence against top line guys, and it just builds and builds from there. So it's the same thing about sending a guy down to the minors as well. You got to get him right against, talent that's maybe not to the level that he's used to going up against. Get him some experience, some confidence. bring him back up. It's the same sort of thing with the line situation.
Okay, that makes total sense. And how do you see this Vince Dunn situation playing out? We talked about Dunn earlier, but do you think this is a guy who could potentially get moved?
I said it before the season. I think he will be long gone from the Blues by the deadline at the earliest. I think
at this rate, we can't get anything for him. It's 6 games in, I know, but at this rate,
he still has so much offensive upside, though. That's the thing. A team will take him. They'll put him on the third defensive pairing. They'll install him on the second power play unit. A team will take a guy like Vince Dunn. Yes, maybe the return isn't as high as you thought it was going to be, but in essence, what did you think the return on Vince Dunn was going to be?
You know, before he came up, I was very excited about Vince Dunn, about what
he fought a guy in a hallway. I'm serious.
Yeah,
seriously. Outside of that, what did you know about Vince Dunn?
That he was tougher down in the AHL than he is here.
Once again, because he fought a guy in a hallway.
Yeah.
I'm just being honest. I mean,
I know.
Think about it. When you heard Vince Dunn, what was the first thing you thought of?
Fighting two future Blackhawks in a freaking locker room is what it was. It was a Blackhawks farm team. Yeah.
So were you thinking of him offensively? Were you thinking, man, this guy's got
he's got a grit to him.
He's got a shot. He can run a power play. I mean, no one thought about that. I mean, the analytics guys knew it, but for the most common fan, what was Vince Dunn's MO? He was going to be the gritty fighting defender. So that's the whole thing. You have to get past it. You have to look deeper. You have to look at what he is. So yes, he has offensive upside, and he does. He's got some slick hands. He's made some plays in his Blues career that make you go, wow, if he could do that consistently, he's going to be a damn good defender. He is probably a little bit of a better Kevin Shattenkirk, but it's so inconsistent in his 4th year, so inconsistent that at some point you have to go, look, maybe a change of scenery is exactly what he needs. Maybe it's just not working out here in St. Louis, and you got to get something for him.
Wags, this is the last thing I'm going to ask about this then. You said defensemen took a little longer to develop. And is that same thing true at the NHL level?
Yes, 100% true.
So, and you told me, and I remember talking the same conversation about Parayko. Takes 5 years. This is his 4th year. Don't you think he deserves that one more year?
You have to look at it, though, and look at Colton Parayko. If you're going to make that argument, look at Colton Parayko. Year in and year out, there's been one thing that people have always complained about Colton Parayko. Okay, it's been a different thing every single year. And the following year, the thing that they were complaining about before has been improved on and worked on.
Okay.
Year over year. When we talk about Vince Dunn, yes, it is only year 4, and it does take a while for most defensemen to develop. I get that. But when you see 0 improvements on specific items that are questioned year in and year out, that right there makes that null and void, because it shows that there's no effort being put into correcting anything, and he feels like he can just get by on the talent alone that he has. Not saying that Vince Dunn is a guy that doesn't work hard. I'm not saying that at all, but it just shows you. I mean, look at the Blues, Ryan O'Reilly, David Perron, guys that are the last off the ice. I bet you if you were to go look at every single practice from the last 4 years, I would put decent money down that Vince Dunn is probably one of the first 15 guys to leave the ice.
All right. I just wanted to know if there was a big difference there, because, you know, you harped on defensemen being longer to develop, and so far Vince Dunn hasn't shown any improvement. So, okay.
But that's the whole point.
Yeah.
It does take a while for defensemen to develop. You could say the same thing about Eric Johnson. We saw the same thing with Alex Pietrangelo. But if you see improvement in areas year over year, if you're not continuously complaining about the same things year in and year out, it's showing you that they are focusing on pieces of their development and getting better at different points of their game. You know, with Parayko, it was his shot. One year it was he wasn't shooting enough. Then he wasn't shooting on net enough. Then he wasn't shooting enough at all. I mean, it's just that's the whole thing. You're seeing different pieces Every year, yes, there are pieces that he needs to work on every year, but it's different. And every year, the piece that you harped on the year before has been improved upon. With Vince Dunn, we're still talking about the fact that he shoots pucks into players' skates on the power play when he's the last guy back. Still making cross-ice passes when he really shouldn't be making cross-ice passes, okay? Some of these fundamental things that make you go, you're in year 4. How are you still doing this?
Exactly.
That's the big difference in my mind. I'm not saying that defensemen don't take long to develop. They do take long to develop. But if you don't see progression over time of certain aspects of the game, it's just showing you that there's no effort being put into those.
Yeah. Very, very well said. I'm hoping we see a little bit better play out of Vince Dunn, because maybe if you do trade him, you get more than you think. What can you get for a guy like Vince Dunn? Draft picks only? Picks only? I mean,
probably a draft pick, maybe a third rounder. I mean, a second rounder would be great. I'd take a second rounder for him. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Like you said, he does. I think he gets benched for a game or two to really, settle in and really maybe just reset. And that might be what he needs. Maybe he just needs a reset. And that's fine. I would love nothing more than for Vince Dunn to be a staple here in St. Louis and be a guy that is a big part of this team going forward. I do not dislike Vince Dunn at all. Okay? Do not dislike him at all. But if we're not going to get what we can out of him, then at some point you have to cut bait.
Yeah. And we were, since Scott's back, I want to ask him the same thing we were talking about earlier. Do you, what were we talking about earlier? Because we were talking about Vince Dunn and everything. But Scott, what are your sentiments on this team? Do you think
Sentiment.
Thank you. My gosh, I keep saying
we're not talking about rocks.
So
what are my thoughts?
What?
Is that what you were asking me?
Yeah, your thoughts on this team.
You asked me what my thoughts were. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah, like I said before I got kicked out, before StreamYard decided to send me away, I think they're a team that's just still trying to figure it all out. I think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to come together and be a good club. It's just going to take a little bit. But I like what I've seen from them for the most part. Their defense is definitely not as tough as they were. They're more of an offensive-minded deep team, but I think they're going to be okay. And I think they're going to be right in the hunt of the division before it's over.
Yep, I agree 100%. They are going to be in the hunt for a division title, and they're going to make the playoffs. There's no question about that. They are a team that you may get frustrated with them at times, but they're going to provide a lot of fireworks. They're going to have some great games. They're going to have some bloody battles with Colorado and Vegas. Those are going to be a lot of fun games. It's going to be an absolute blast watching this team this year. And I'm beyond excited that hockey is back, and hopefully we can get through this. I know that we've had some instances with games being canceled in other divisions right now, but hopefully that doesn't happen with the Blues and the Western Division, but more than likely it probably will. We just going to have to bear with it and see what happens. You can't really fight it right now. So just hope for the best as the rest of this season goes on. Anything else you guys want to pop out there before we head out today? Because we've been going for 2 hours today. We had a lot to talk about. Anything else you guys got on your mind before we head out?
Real quick, I don't know if you guys talked about it. I don't think we did. Did you guys talk about the fact that did we talk about the fact that the Arizona League's wanting to push back spring training, Cactus League?
No, not yet. Not yet.
So yeah, that's one big worry as we're talking about spring training being a couple of weeks away, is that with the pandemic kind of raging in Arizona and in Florida still as well, that maybe we aren't going to get spring training on time as we had thought, which is kind of a bummer.
Yeah, that's an absolute bummer, because Valentine's Day roughly signifies for those of us that are single and don't have a significant other. Valentine's Day is kind of the unofficial start of spring training, and to get to that moment and potentially not have baseball out on the diamond is definitely a scary situation. Could we see, and I know this is going to affect some of these, some of the cold weather teams, but could we see more of a spring training at the home ballparks if that's the case, or would Major League Baseball push back the start of spring training?
I don't know. I mean, the players are going to want to play 162 games. That's going to be the key, is how do they figure that out? So maybe you do find a way to do spring training at home ballparks, or maybe you push it back. Maybe you push it back 2 or 3 weeks, see what happens, and then have to play some split 7-inning doubleheaders or something to get 162 games in. But that's going to be the big sticking point, is the players aren't going to come off on the fact that they want to play a full season, or more than they want to play a full 162 game season, they want to get paid for a full 162 game season this year.
I would agree with that, because look, the players, the owners suffered. I don't know at the extent what they suffered. It was a lot of money. I understand that. But I think the players deserve a little bit more. But I think there has to be an even ground here. There has to be prorated salaries, but not to the point where they were, because it's not going to be a 60-game season. You can't do a 60-game season this year and expect Major League Baseball not to go under necessarily. So yeah, I think
didn't they sign like a multi-billion-dollar deal with a television company to show games this year? Didn't Mookie Betts sign like $750 million contract in the middle of a pandemic?
We still don't know the numbers, Wags. We still don't know the damn numbers of how much they lost.
But hey, Joe, here's a question for you. If the owners lost so much money, how come when spring training came out and we saw the numbers that they expected these free agents to get were like $4 or $5 million a year, $6 million a year, and all of a sudden somehow the owners are paying these guys 3 and 4 times that? I mean, guys like Jerkson Profar just got a 4-year, $28 million deal. He was expected to get like $4 million for 1 year. Brad Hand just got $10 million. The owners can cry poor all they want, but somehow all of a sudden they're throwing out a whole bunch of money to a lot of guys. Look what Michael Brantley just got.
Look at what George Springer just got. I get it.
So that right there that throws into the face your argument.
Yeah. So I could see this getting really hairy again. Do you guys see it the way I do?
I mean, they're going to fight back and forth, but I don't think it's going to be hairy, because it doesn't do either side any good not to get something agreed upon and get as many games in as they can this year, because we don't know what's going to happen next year with the labor agreement. So I think it'll get done. It's just going to be right at the last minute, kind of like we saw right before they started playing those 60 games last year.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. I mean, after playing 60 last year, running the risk of not playing a full season this year with the labor negotiations looming, that's just not going to happen. Now, health reasons why, if something happens along the lines of them not being able to start because of COVID or restrictions or things like that, something that's kind of out of their control, that's a different story. But when it comes, if they have the ability to play a full season and somebody decides, oh, we're not going to let this happen, that's a huge misstep on whether it's the owners or the players, because without knowing what next year is going to bring as far as the contract negotiations, you need to get as much done this year as possible, just in case. Because if you're talking about MLB's, status waning now, imagine what would happen if you lose half a season this year, not because of COVID, but because of somebody's inability to settle on a decision, and then you have a strike next year. Baseball, it would come back, but it would definitely have taken a huge, huge hit if that were to be the case. So a full season is going to happen. It's just a matter of, when that decision is made. It'll probably be, like Scott said, absolutely last minute, 23rd hour before the season starts.
They talk about Major League Baseball and the Players Association being the tightest knit, I guess, relationship. That's taken a hit over the last year and a half, hasn't it? I mean, we talk about this all the time, Scott. I ask this question in Wags. I ask this question all the time. Will there be a strike? I don't know if I believe you guys anymore. I think there might be one. and that's scary to even think about.
There won't be a strike. I can see there being a lockout and part of spring training being missed. They're not going to miss regular season games next year because, like Wags just said, that would be absolutely catastrophic to the sport. So no, there won't be a strike. We may see a lockout where a couple of weeks of spring training get missed or pushed back, but the season will start next year and they'll play 162 games.
Wags.
Yeah, and talking about the tight-knitness of the league, it's more of the Players Association is tight-knit for sure, and the owners are tight-knit for sure, but there's no cohesiveness between the players and the owners.
Right.
That's where things get broken down. Now, if you had something where the owners and the players were in hand in hand going through this together, totally a different story. But that no matter what league, no matter how good labor negotiations are, no league will have owners and players being completely on the same page about everything. It just isn't going to happen. Now, you're going to have, the NBA is a really good example in a sense that, there has been some bad blood between the players and the owners. But at the end of the day, both sides recognize that they need to be on the court, they need to be on TV, and they need to be getting their product out there. So they're going to find ways to make it work. It's when you get the stubbornness of ownership or players where things start to deteriorate. And, like I said, the NBA is a perfect example because you've got young owners and you've got diverse owners. Look at the NFL, still a majority old white rich men. Major League Baseball, still to an extent older rich men. You have some diversity in Major League Baseball that is starting to come about. The NHL, you're starting to see a little bit, but it's still such a niche sport that it's not necessarily as big of a deal in the NHL as some of these other sports. But really, you have to look at the NBA. When you've got young, diverse ownership groups that are kind of fluid and help recognize the situation, you're going to have better labor peace. NFL, not so much. Major League Baseball, not so much. Although I think MLB is progressing there a little bit faster than the NFL.
Yeah, and relations between Major League Baseball Players Association and the owners have never been good. Historically, it's been the worst league of any of them. There's just always been strife between the two sides. And part of that is because the Players Association has more power than any other Players Association in any of the other major sports.
100% agreed. 100% agreed. Well, guys, that was an epic show today. Over 2 hours talking about everything in the world of sports. Just an excellent show, guys. We want to thank you guys for listening. Make sure you catch us every night here on Crunch Time, nightly here on Amateur Sports TV. Catch the podcast on any podcast networks that you guys do follow. Radio show Sundays 9 to 11 on KYRO 1280 AM, 105.3 FM. We want to thank you once again for joining us. For Joe, for Scott, I am Wags. Have a great rest of your Monday and a great week.